Black CEO, mocked by Mogul's wife at tower opening minutes later, she reclaimed the $9, 9B building. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. This isn't for farm girls. The words exploded through the crystal-lit hall like a champagne flute shattering on marble. Every head turned. Every smile paused midair. A laugh, sharp, triumphant, dripping entitlement, sliced right after it. At the center of the room stood the woman in the red gown, her finger aimed like a dagger across the glowing model of the $8.3 billion tower. Her face was lit with the perfect cruelty of someone who had never been corrected in her life. Her friends leaned in, giggling like they were watching a performance written just for them. On the opposite side of the model, standing calm, poised, and devastatingly composed, was the black woman they were mocking. Her dress, a deep, ember orange silk, caught the soft blue accent lights, turning her into the warmest thing in a cold room. In her hands, a black presentation folder embossed with gold lettering. She didn't flinch. She didn't shift. She simply breathed slow, measured as if absorbing the entire insult into her lungs and converting it into something sharper. Around them, the crowd began to circle, an orbit of tuxedos and gowns, drawn not by empathy, but by the promise of spectacle. Phones rose discreetly. Champagne paused mid-sip. Someone whispered, "Who is she?" Another murmured, "Probably staff." The laughter built polite at first, then eager, then merciless. The red-gowned woman leaned closer to the model, pointing again. "She probably thinks this tower is impressive," she cooed loudly. "But sweetheart, this is our world, not yours." More laughter erupted, bouncing off glass and steel decor, echoing under the chandelier's pale glow. This was entertainment to them, humiliation performed publicly and without consequence. But there was something wrong, something off, something in the air, because the black woman's stillness did not look like submission. It looked like containment, a quiet, elegant, deliberate containment, the kind that made the temperature in the room drop half a degree, the kind that made people's laughter falter without knowing why, the kind that made even the model of the tower seem to shine differently, reflecting its light across her cheekbone like a crown she hadn't revealed yet. She slowly raised her eyes, and the moment felt like a camera tightening into a close-up. No anger, no fear, just clarity, cold, pure, geometric clarity. And for the first time, the woman in red hesitated. A microsecond, a glitch, because she expected outrage, or tears, or denial. She didn't expect silence that felt like a verdict. Behind her, the crowd shifted uneasily. A man cleared his throat. Someone lowered their phone. The faint hum of the air conditioning suddenly seemed louder, as if the entire room was listening for what would happen next. Before that moment could snap, the narrator's voice slid in, low and cinematic. "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story." The camera of the moment refocused. The black woman adjusted her grip on the presentation folder. The room fell into a hush that didn't belong to the red-gowned woman anymore. It belonged to her. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. She stepped closer to the model, not around it, not away from it, but through its shadow, walking into the center of the light meant for others. The woman in red blinked. The room waited, and the storm, elegant and silent, prepared to speak. For a long, fragile second, the room didn't breathe. The chandelier above them glowed steady, but everything beneath it changed shape. The laughter, the posture, even the air itself. What had been a playful crowd seconds ago now shifted into something else entirely. Witnesses, Observers. People suddenly unsure if they were standing on the right side of the moment. The woman in red sensed it too. Her smile trembled only for a flicker, but enough for the nearest guest to catch it. She straightened her spine, forced a laugh, and tried to reclaim the stage. "Oh, come on," she said, waving her manicured hand in a faux playful arc. "Don't take it personally, sweetheart. We're just having fun." But the fun was already dying, because the black woman across the model didn't blink, didn't move, didn't give her the permission to turn cruelty into comedy. Her silence wasn't awkward, it was architectural, purposeful. It filled the room like an invisible structure no one else could see, yet everyone suddenly felt the weight of. She lifted her chin slightly, and something in the light caught along the edge of her jaw, clean and precise. It reminded the room of steel, of glass, of the very tower standing illuminated between them. A man near the back whispered, "She's not staff." Another murmured, "Then who is she?" The red-gowned woman heard it too. Her eyes darted toward the crowd, then snapped back toward her target. The first fracture of uncertainty crawled across her expression. She stepped closer to the model, trying to close the distance, reclaim dominance with proximity. "You know," she said, voice coated in sugar, "these events can be overwhelming for newcomers. Maybe you're just a little lost." The black woman's gaze drifted over her, soft but devastating, the kind of look that didn't need words to communicate precisely what she thought of the insult. It wasn't anger. It wasn't injury. It was recognition. Recognition of a pattern she had met 1,000 times in 1,000 rooms that thought they owned her silence. Someone shifted their weight. Someone coughed. The atmosphere thickened, cold and slow, like fog rolling across marble. A waiter froze mid-step, holding a silver tray of champagne flutes. Even he could feel it, the tilt, the imbalance, the room rearranging around one woman who had said nothing and already changed everything. The woman in red tried again, sharper this time. "I asked you a question," she pressed, voice losing its silk. "Who exactly invited you?" The question cracked something, not in the black woman, but in the room, because it landed with a thud too heavy, too telling, too soaked in entitlement to disguise itself. A few guests finally shifted uncomfortably. One man lowered his phone. A woman in a navy gown muttered, "This is going too far." But the ringleader didn't hear any of it, or refused to. She leaned forward, her grin tightening. "I mean, really, this is a private unveiling, not some open house on a cornfield." The insult echoed, harder than the first. The model's lights flickered faintly, throwing thin veins of illumination across their faces. In that trembling glow, the black woman finally moved just a breath, just a shift, but it recalibrated the entire room. Her fingers smoothed the edge of the presentation folder. Her eyes locked onto the woman in red, and the stillness vanished, replaced by something colder, sharper. A quiet that felt like the moment before glass breaks. The crowd sensed the shift and fell into absolute silence, because someone finally realized what they were truly watching. Not humiliation, not embarrassment, but the slow, deliberate ignition of a storm. The red-gowned woman opened her mouth to fire another line, but her voice stumbled, caught on something invisible, like the room itself refused to carry the sound for her. A soft, mechanical hum drifted from the ceiling vents. The lights above dimmed by half a shade, turning the space cooler, bluer, more merciless. Someone whispered, "She's about to say something." But she didn't. Not yet. She simply breathed in, long, steady, as if inhaling the entire room. And when she exhaled, the balance of power shifted with it. What happened next was small, almost nothing. But in a room like this, a room sharpened by money, status, and carefully curated power, even the smallest sound could feel like a tectonic shift. The black woman's thumb brushed the edge of her presentation folder. Just that. A movement so light it barely disturbed the air. But it was enough to send a ripple through the crowd, because the gesture did not look nervous. It looked practiced. Deliberate. The kind of motion you'd expect from someone who'd spent a lifetime making decisions that changed skylines. The woman in red swallowed. It was quiet, but the microphone pinned on her gown picked up the sound, turning it into a soft, amplified click that slipped through the speakers like a crack in glass. She forced a smile again. "You're awfully quiet," she said, trying to resurrect the laughter that had already died. Usually when people sneak into these events, they at least pretend to know what's going on. The line didn't land. It fell flat at her feet, a wilted punchline, in a room that had stopped wanting comedy. The black woman finally lifted her eyes fully, letting them sweep across the semicircle of faces watching her. Not judging, not pleading. Simply observing, cataloging reactions with the precision of someone who wasn't intimidated by the room, but evaluating it. And for the first time, the onlookers realized something unsettling. She wasn't out of place here. She wasn't confused or overwhelmed. She was assessing. A subtle tension tugged at the crowd. The waiter with the champagne tray stepped back, sensing the temperature shift. A man loosened his tie. A woman clasped her clutch tighter. The sharp scent of citrus perfume from somewhere in the front row suddenly felt too strong, too bright, cutting into the coldness creeping along the room's edges. The woman in red tried again, this time letting impatience stain her tone. "Look," she said, "this tower means a great deal to my husband. Our family has invested years into this project. And this event," she gestured around dramatically, "is for people who actually belong in this world." Her friends nodded, some eagerly, some nervously, but the crowd behind them stayed still, their expressions shifting in real time. Discomfort, doubt, curiosity, and something else forming beneath it all. Suspicion. One man whispered, barely audible, "Why does she look so familiar?" His companion murmured, "I've seen her somewhere. Maybe Forbes?" "Impossible," another hissed. They wouldn't treat someone important like this. But the room wasn't so sure anymore, because the model's blue-white lights reflected off the black woman's dress in a way that made her look oddly central, as if the tower's illumination was designed specifically for her, as if the architecture itself recognized her more than the people did. The woman in red felt the shift too. Her confidence wavered. She stepped closer to the black woman, angling her body to block the view of the crowd, trying to smother the power she didn't understand. Her voice dropped, low and venomous. "Tell me who invited you," she demanded. "Right now." The black woman didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, a gesture so calm it bordered on regal, and looked past the woman in red, toward the tall double doors at the back of the hall, as if she were waiting, as if she already knew what came next. The crowd turned instinctively to follow her gaze. And right on cue, the doors opened. A project coordinator rushed in, tablet in hand, his expression tight with urgency. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on the woman in red. Color drained from his face. He hesitated, glanced at the black woman, then at the model, then back at the red-gowned host. The silence thickened. The coordinator swallowed hard and started walking toward them, each step echoing too loudly for the soft carpet beneath him. The woman in red stiffened. "What now?" she snapped, annoyed. But the coordinator didn't look annoyed. He looked terrified. He reached the two women, leaned in, and whispered something into the hostess's ear, something short, something quiet, but heavy enough to make her spine straighten and the blood drain from her expression. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched, and for the first time since the night began, she looked afraid. The woman in red didn't blink at first. She froze perfectly, unnaturally, as if her body couldn't decide whether to breathe or collapse. Whatever the coordinator had whispered wasn't long, but the weight of it bent her posture just a fraction, enough for the nearest guest to sense the fracture. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her champagne flute. The glass trembled. The liquid inside wavered like a reflection breaking apart. The coordinator stepped back, clearly wanting to retreat into anonymity, but the room was already watching him, watching her, watching them. And in that spotlight of collective attention, the red-gowned woman forced a brittle smile onto her face, a smile stretched too thin to hide the rising panic. "Excuse me," she said to him through her teeth. "That must be a mistake." The coordinator's eyes flicked toward the black woman, just for a second, just enough, and the crowd caught it. A small gasp fluttered through the guests. People leaned in as if the air itself had become a whispered secret no one wanted to miss. The black woman remained perfectly still. She hadn't spoken a single word since the insult that started it all. She didn't need to, because power, real power, doesn't rush. It waits. It lets others reveal themselves. And that silence, poised, sharpened, unshakable, made the room hum with an energy that felt like the moment before lightning strikes. The woman in red exhaled sharply, her composure slipping. "I asked you," she said, voice cracking louder than she intended. "Who invited you?" The black woman finally shifted her gaze back to her. Slow, precise, a movement so controlled it made the hostess take a single, instinctive step back. Before the tension could snap, the narrator's voice returned, pulling the viewer in closer. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. The room refocused. You could feel the coldness in the air deepen, as if the entire event center had adjusted its temperature to match the shift in power. The lights above flickered once, a soft stutter of electricity that painted everyone's faces in quick flashes of uncertainty. The hostess tried to recover, straightening her shoulders, planting her feet like she was standing her ground. This event, she declared loudly, is for investors, partners, and people with actual stake in the project. So unless you have something to prove your place here, she didn't finish, because the black woman slowly opened the presentation folder in her hands. The sound was soft, the faint whisper of expensive paper sliding against textured cover, but it carried like a thunderclap. Every gaze dropped to the folder as she lifted a single document, crisp and embossed with the gold seal of the project's ownership board. Even before they could see the details, the energy in the room detonated. One woman gasped. A man whispered, "No, no way." Another murmured, "That's a controlling interest contract. I've seen those." The hostess's throat tightened. What is that?" "There is matter all rattles, in matter doord. In matter doord he sees." The black woman didn't answer. She didn't need to. She simply let the document rest between her fingers, angled just enough for the nearest VIP guest to catch the heading. Primary capital authorization holder, 71% ownership. The woman in red staggered backward, gripping a chair as if the floor had tilted beneath her. "That's impossible," she whispered, but her voice was no longer sharp. It was collapsing, folding in on itself, trembling under the weight of something she finally recognized. Consequence. The coordinator behind them swallowed hard and murmured, "Ma'am, they confirmed everything. She's not a guest." A trembling breath. "She's the lead." That sentence tore through the room. A rupture, a revelation. The black woman lowered the document, eyes calm, controlled, and devastating. Still silent, still waiting. And the room, every face, every whisper, every ounce of arrogance, finally understood. The storm hadn't arrived. She had been the storm all along. The room did not erupt. It didn't scream or scatter or melt into chaos. Instead, it performed the most devastating reaction possible in a place built on wealth and ego. It went dead silent. Silence so complete it felt curated, designed, engineered like the tower model glowing between them. The hostess in red stared at the document as if it were a hallucination. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, no words, only shock scraping against her throat. She tried to speak, but the microphone pinned to her gown betrayed her, amplifying every shaky breath. A man near the front whispered, 71%. Another answered, "That means she owns." A third finished, "Everything." The black woman still hadn't spoken. Her silence now felt like architecture, clean lines, perfect angles, a structure more impressive than the tower model itself. She closed the folder with a soft click that echoed like the ceiling of fate. Someone in the crowd stumbled back, bumping a waiter. A flute of champagne nearly tipped. Even the orchestra, stationed in the corner of the hall, lowered their instruments in unison, sensing a shift that didn't require music to underscore. The hostess steadied herself on the edge of the display table. This must be some kind of misunderstanding," she said, her voice fraying. "My husband and I, we've led this project for years." A low murmur swept the crowd, sympathy from a few, disbelief from many, judgment from everyone. But the black woman simply tilted her head, studying the hostess like an engineer examining a structural flaw in a building she hadn't approved. For the first time tonight, she moved with purpose. She stepped forward. One step, two. The model tower behind her threw a long reflection across the floor, cutting between them like a blade of light. The hostess backed up instinctively. Don't look at me like that," she stammered. You can't just walk in here and take over. You weren't even on the guest list." The black woman raised her gaze, calm and unshaken, as if the accusation were beneath even the dignity of contradicting. And then, finally, she spoke. Her voice was low, steady, precise. Because I wasn't invited, she said. I authorized the event. A collective gasp broke from the crowd. She continued, her tone almost gentle. I don't attend as a guest in buildings I own. The hostess reeled backward, as if struck. Her friends stared at her, eyes wide, suddenly realizing they had cheered on a humiliation staged against the wrong person, the worst person to choose. The coordinator stepped forward cautiously. Miss Brooks, he said to the black woman, addressing her with a level of respect the room hadn't seen all night. The board also requested a statement from you regarding the incident. The hostess flinched. What incident? The coordinator hesitated, glanced at the crowd, then at her. The one happening right now, he said quietly. A man near the bar muttered, they're filing a misconduct report on her. On the hostess? Yes. Tonight? It's already in progress. The red-gowned woman's knees nearly buckled. She reached out desperately. Wait, there's been a mistake. I didn't know who she was. The black woman's eyes didn't soften. They sharpened. That, she said, was clear. And in dad it is I-N meter. And in Dan, it is not a prems. The crowd felt the weight of those words, sharp, elegant, devastating, because they weren't shouted. They weren't emotional. They were diagnostic. A professional assessment of moral failure. The hostess pressed her hand to her chest, humiliation, flooding her face in hot waves of red. Please, she whispered. I didn't mean. Intent, the black woman said, doesn't change impact. The phrase landed like a verdict. She turned her head slightly, addressing the coordinator. Prepare the boardroom for a remote session tonight. He nodded immediately. Yes, ma'am. The hostess gasped. Tonight? Why? What are you going to do? The black woman closed the folder fully, her expression unreadable. Evaluate leadership, she said softly. The room rippled with shock. Because in a world like this, there is nothing more terrifying than a calm woman holding the majority share and speaking the language of consequences. The model tower glowed brighter behind her, its lights steady and cold. The storm had spoken, and the building, the project, the legacy the hostess had bragged about, it now belonged to the woman she tried to humiliate. The words hung in the air, evaluate leadership, and the entire hall seemed to contract around them. They weren't loud, but they carried the kind of weight that made walls straighten and nerves tighten. The hostess in red stared at the black woman as if she were staring at the edge of a cliff she hadn't realized she'd been standing on all night. Evaluate, she repeated, voice cracking. What does that mean? But the black woman didn't answer her. Her gaze shifted past the hostess, toward the far end of the hall where staff members, event coordinators, building partners, junior executives were clustered. Their conversations died instantly under her eyes. Phones lowered, postures stiffened. People who had laughed minutes ago now stood like schoolchildren, caught in stolen mischief, unsure who she would address next, unsure if they were implicated too. The coordinator cleared his throat quietly. Everyone, please stand by. A board session will commence shortly. That sentence alone reshaped the room. Board sessions didn't happen shortly. They happened with notice weeks of it. They required scheduling, legal preparation, planned agendas. But when a 71% holder called for one, it was law. The hostess's husband, the mogul behind the project, finally pushed through the crowd. His face was flushed, not with embarrassment, but with the desperate urgency of a man who had built an identity on the illusion of control. Victoria, he hissed at his wife. What did you? He stopped mid-sentence the moment he saw the black woman holding the ownership contract. His entire body froze. He swallowed hard, extended a hand toward her with the stiffness of someone reaching toward royalty. Ma'am, Miss Brooks, I wasn't informed you'd be attending tonight. She didn't take his hand. She simply looked at it until he lowered it, humiliated in front of his own investors. I didn't attend, she said smoothly. I arrived. The correction struck like a gavel. Around them, whispers sharpened into threads of disbelief. He knew? No, look at him. He had no idea. Then who has she been negotiating through? She must run a silent fund. 71%. Good God. The Grektiting in Kantu de size months from Atterdob. The mogul attempted a painful smile, sweat collecting at his temple. I assure you, he said shakily, whatever unpleasantness occurred tonight, it was a symptom, she finished, eyes steady. Not a moment. He blinked rapidly. I don't follow. You will, she replied. In the boardroom. His breath hitched. The hostess looked between them, panic rising like a tide. "You can't do this," she pleaded. "It was just a misunderstanding, a joke taken the wrong way." Her voice cracked on the last word, trembling with the realization that jokes made from privilege often sounded like cruelty from below. The black woman studied her quietly, no anger, no triumph, no softening, just truth. "In leadership," she said, "a joke is never just a joke." The crowd murmured, agreeing, learning, reassessing every moment they had witnessed tonight. The mogul regained his voice. "What exactly are you planning?" The black woman nodded once to the coordinator. "Bring the files." He rushed off. She shifted her stance. Posture tall, centered, carved from calm authority. "A full audit of conduct," she said. "Decision-making, employment ethics, oversight failures." Her gaze moved to the hostess. "And how culture was allowed to decay on your watch." Victoria's knees weakened. You can't blame me for others' behavior." "You led the room," the black woman said. "They followed your example." The mogul stepped forward, hands shaking. "Miss Brooks, please. We can settle this privately. There's no need to escalate." Her eyes met his. "It escalated the moment your wife mistook my silence for absence." The line detonated through the hall. People inhaled sharply. Someone whispered, "God, she's brilliant." Another murmured, "He's done." "It is a better polity want another any better." A later dad event about it in the mid herself. The hostess covered her mouth, tears pooling, not from remorse but from fear. Fear that the empire she flaunted was already slipping through her fingers like shattered glass. And then, the coordinator returned, carrying a stack of tablets and documents, his expression grave. "Everything is prepared," he said, voice low. "The board is waiting." The mogul turned pale. The black woman accepted the top tablet. Its screen lit her face in a cool, controlled glow. "Good," she said. She lifted her eyes toward the couple, one trembling, one defeated. "Let's begin." The boardroom wasn't a room at all. It materialized across the event hall through a wall of screens, each square lighting up with the faces of executives, legal officers, compliance directors, and silent partners who suddenly looked very awake for a late evening session. Their backgrounds varied: glass offices, home libraries, airport lounges, but every face shared the same expression. They knew who held 71%, and they knew why she had called. The crowd instinctively parted, forming a respectful corridor as the black woman stepped forward, tablet in hand. The mogul and his trembling wife stood just behind her, no longer at the center of the event but at the edge of it, spectators to their own unraveling. A voice crackled through the speakers. "Miss Brooks, we've reviewed the preliminary report." Another voice followed, cold, clipped, purely professional. "Conduct concerns appear systemic, not isolated." A third chimed in. "We are prepared to proceed with recommendations." The mogul blinked, stunned. "Recommendations? Already? We haven't even—" He stopped when the black woman slowly turned her head toward him. Silence. A silence that bent him into submission. She lifted the tablet. "Display it," and the main screen shifted. Footage appeared, raw, unedited clips from the last 20 minutes. The insult, the laughter, the crowd circling like spectators around a cage. The hostess pointing at her, calling her farm girl, dismissing her existence as if she were intruding on a world she helped finance. Even the board watched the footage like it was evidence submitted in a trial. Because it was. The hostess shook violently. "Please, please, I didn't know." One board member cut her off. "Respect is not contingent on recognition." Another added, "If this is how leadership interacts with guests, investors, or staff, it reflects poorly on the entire enterprise." The mogul tried again. "It was a mistake." "A pattern," the black woman said softly. "Not a mistake." Her voice wasn't loud. It was judicial. The crowd felt it. The shift from humiliation to consequence to justice. A compliance officer spoke next. "Miss Brooks, our team recommends the immediate suspension of both parties pending a full ethics review." The mogul inhaled sharply. "Both?" The officer didn't blink. "You are responsible for oversight." The wife collapsed into a chair, covering her face. The mogul stared at the screen, skin drained of color. And then the board chair appeared, an older woman with silver hair pulled into a sleek knot. Her voice calm as steel. "Miss Brooks," she said, "as majority holder, the final decision rests with you." The entire hall stopped breathing. The mogul whispered, Please. My family. Our legacy, everything we've built. She turned toward him with a levelness that felt like gravity. Legacy isn't what you build, she replied. It's what you uphold. Her thumb hovered over the tablet. One tap. That was all it would take. The hostess sobbed. The mogul trembled. The board waited. The room watched. She lowered her hand. Proceed, she said quietly, and the world they controlled began to collapse. The decision struck the room like a pressure wave, silent, invisible, but powerful enough to bend the air. A single line appeared across the boardroom screens. Ethics suspension. Active. Red banners illuminated the digital interfaces. One by one, the board members nodded, their faces reflecting the official nature of what had just happened. No shouting, no theatrics, just corporate silence, the kind that destroys faster than fire. The mogul collapsed into the nearest chair, hands shaking uncontrollably. His wife didn't sit. She couldn't. She stood frozen, mascara streaking down her cheeks, staring at the glowing suspension notice as if it were her own obituary. Then the phones began. Not all at once, not loudly, but in thin, sharp vibrations, one device after another. Notifications, alerts, mentions, market triggers. Someone whispered, "It's already online." Another added, "Who posted the video?" A third answered, "Everyone." Screens lit up across the hall. The footage of the insult, "This isn't for farm girls," was already circulating on social media. A clip only seconds long, but enough to burn through a reputation with surgical precision. The comments flooded in. How do these people still run anything? Power shows who you are. She handled it with more grace than they deserved. Suspend them? Terminate them. The hostess grabbed her husband's arm. Turn it off, she begged. Make them take it down, do something. He shook his head, hollow. You can't stop the internet. 7 Hell City in a ride with fighter Jadal, Sibliv long in the Gover Dogra. Investors in the crowd began stepping away from the couple like they were stepping back from a cliff. Conversations went cold. People who had smiled at them hours earlier now pretended not to recognize them. The brand they had spent years building prestige polished into marble was shattering in real time. The orchestra packed up quietly, sensing the night had transformed from celebration to corporate eulogy. A journalist in the back typed rapidly, her eyes wide with the kind of headline that could pay her rent for months. The black woman, Miss Brooks, watched it all with a stillness that wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability. Because consequences weren't cruel, they were educational. A board member's voice broke through the screens again. Miss Brooks, pending review. Operational control defaults to you. A ripple went through the hall. The mogul lifted his head, horrified. Operational control? She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. When leadership fails, she said quietly, the structure needs reinforcement. A man near the front murmured to his colleague, "She's taking the project." His colleague nodded. "She already has it." The hostess pressed her palms together. "Please," she gasped. "We're begging you, don't destroy us." Miss Brooks turned toward her slowly. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," she said, "but I will not subsidize cruelty." The sentence slid into the room like a blade of glass, clear, cold, and impossible to ignore. Behind her, the tower model glowed brighter, its blue lights catching the edges of her silhouette. A reminder, a symbol, a warning. Because in the world of glass and steel, strength isn't loud. It stands tall. It watches. And when needed, it takes back what was never given. Morning arrived before anyone realized the night had ended. By sunrise, every major outlet carried the headline. Every business column dissected the footage. Every investor knew the shift of power was irreversible. And by noon, a single announcement confirmed what the room already felt in their bones. Leadership restructured. Operational authority transferred. Brooks Holdings assumes control. The mogul's empire, once untouchable, was now suspended on a single hinge. A review they were destined to fail. His wife stayed hidden from cameras, her absence louder than any statement she could have made. But Miss Brooks didn't hide. She walked the site that afternoon, the real tower rising above the city like a monument reclaiming its name. Engineers followed. Contractors cleared paths. Executives straightened their collars as she passed. They knew who she was now. She stopped at the observation deck, overlooking the skyline she'd helped bankroll long before anyone bothered to learn her face. The wind lifted the edge of her coat, carrying the quiet authority that had shaped this entire reckoning. No triumph, no spectacle, just truth. Behind her, a junior architect approached nervously. "Ma'am," he said, "what should the new name of the tower be?" Miss Brooks looked up at the structure: glass, steel, ambition turned physical. "Call it the Eleanor Brooks Tower," she said softly. "My grandmother built more with her bare hands than these people ever built with their privilege." The architect nodded, reverent, and as Miss Brooks turned to leave, the tower caught the afternoon sun, burning gold along its edges like it understood exactly who it belonged to now. Justice didn't need noise. It just needed a signature.